Greetings, friends, and welcome to another episode of Tim Kirby Russia, where I, veteran political analyst and radio talk show host Tim Kirby, guy who's been living in Russia for what seems like an eternity, tells you about how the world looks like through a Russian lens. Today's guest is Grace Asagra, the Quantum Nurse. I was recently on her program and I had a very good time. And I must say that I was very intrigued to talk to an actual nurse in the United States who went through the whole pandemic problem start to finish on the inside. So we're going to have her on to talk about those issues and some of her other pet peeves as to why she's sort of fighting to have a different take on medicine in a global sense. So we'll get to know her battle against the status quo very soon. But for now, I'd like to talk about one sort of medical issue that's come up in a legal sense in Russia. So the Russian government is considering trying to put some sort of ban on certain non-traditional medicinal practices. So what do they mean by that? What do I mean by that? They're talking about stuff where it's like you go to some sort of parlor and they heal you with magic crystals, or well, to be honest, one time when we were out filming out east, I got to be part of a ceremony where they healed me with a lot of dead animal parts, including a bear's penis. So maybe some of that, So basically these sort of magical, mystical healing with stuff that may not be exactly proven technology, like homeopathy, for example. I know probably a lot of you are into that, but when it comes to science class, science doesn't like homeopathy, or at least for now it doesn't. And that's actually kind of the big question here. Because on the one hand, I can see how in Russian society, especially we can see after what's happened in Ukraine, there's always been this kind of feeling here that maybe the globalist overlords, as Alex Jones would like to call them, have been trying to really push down Russia. And there's definitely this belief that certain television programs, like especially the Battle of the ESP people, or people with extrasensory perception, this TV show has these supposed psychics and mystics who are like trying to like help people solve things. It's obviously fake, and a lot of people feel that it's been this sort of tool to like normalize like witchcraft and like gypsy tarot reading and a lot of stuff that's basically satanic, or at least according to the Bible and the Quran, you know what I mean? So there's that. But there's also been a lot of weird stuff, especially in the 90s, related to sort of like interesting opinions on health. And there's this sort of also view from society that maybe there are certain forces trying to like tell everyone, no man, you don't need medicine, you just need magic crystals, as some sort of attempt to exterminate Russians off the planet. I don't know, maybe there's a drop of truth to that, but that's an awfully slow way to do it, my friends. So to be honest, I think that on this particular issue, I'm going to have to say that right now Russia in general is in a big state of flux. The special military operation happened. The West cut Russia off from everything, especially financially, and now Russia's sort of free-floating out there. Sort of like a ship without a mast, and it's just sort of out in the ocean, and it's nice to have the freedom to be moving, but I think in a lot of ways society doesn't know where to go. And I think jumping on people who may be consciously kind of con artists with their magic crystals and red laces and all those other doodads, and some of the people who just really actually believe that they have magic powers, I think jumping on that is probably not really where we need to go. Crack down on a, I don't know, somewhat like satanic approach to faith healing or whatever. But it worries me because remember, guys, Russia just went through this whole pandemic looking pretty good. There was like a 3-month lockdown, at least in Moscow. A lot of places there weren't. Things here were very humane. They are definitely a million bazillion times better than Canada and Australia based on the messages you guys have been sending me. So I think Russia did real good in its behavior related to COVID. Then again, remember, the second Russia started the special military operation, COVID died here. So the second Russia became truly independent from the West, well, that was the end of that. And so I don't think now is the time, really, especially given the context of what just happened, to start telling people, no, even though it's using magic crystals to heal yourself, I do think is kind of stupid. Making it like illegal or trying to crack down on it, because that's going to take a lot of resources and effort. And it's just like, just let people treat themselves how they want. You know what I mean? There's obviously going to be people who are going to read something online and they're going to be like, oh my God, I just read this thing where if you go on the carnivore diet and you eat nothing but steak and butter, you'll have 10 times more energy or some BS like that. Or the opposite, all these vegans who look like they're living corpses who are like, I'm living the healthiest lifestyle ever. So there's a lot of BS online. There's always going to be bad medical advice. There's always going to be people who believe in magical stuff. But do we need to crack down on this? Is this really an existential threat to like Russia where we need to tell people what they should be doing or what medical treatments are absolutely forbidden? I don't know. I don't know. You know, obviously, there are some charlatans out there who are willing to take money from people to heal them and watch them die as they drain them of money. I mean, obviously, that's not so great. But do we need to create this overarching, gigantic system to crush these, even the slightest possibility of this happening, which will probably then force people to not be able to seek alternative forms of medical treatment, even ones that are a lot more reasonable? I don't know. So I think this is kind of a bad idea, and I'm pretty sure our guest, Grace Asagra, agrees with me. Let's keep even things that I don't particularly like homeopathy, let's just keep it legal in Russia because freedom's awesome, isn't it? So anyways, let's talk to Grace Asagra about what her experiences were like during the pandemic right in the middle of the United States, during all of that as a nurse, and her thoughts on medical care, so on and so forth. All right, so first off, Grace, one thing you even told me was that people sometimes don't really understand your background. So could you tell us sort of like real quick, from, birth to becoming a nurse in the United States, how did this all happen? What's your background like?
I grew up in the Philippines, so that's where my home country is. So, and then I was already a nurse when I came here. And then I started working. And usually, when someone from the Philippines who's a nurse comes or goes away from the family, it's because we have a responsibility to help our family. And so, but when I came here, I just continued to study and study and study. So basically, that's the little brief background of like migration, And right now, I am in Princeton, New Jersey. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, people thought because I speak so much about my culture, so then they thought I'm still in the Philippines. But I'm always connected there.
Well, we'll actually talk a little bit about your cultural feelings later, because first I want to talk to you about the whole going through COVID as a nurse. So could you tell us, because I've talked on my channel about what it was like sort of being, I don't know, I guess a person who works in the media in Russia, and how things were kind of actually a little bit even different between Moscow, the city, and the Moscow region. So what was it like doing nursing during COVID in New Jersey?
Well, at the beginning, generally, like in March 2020, no,
Mm-hmm.
was it 2020? Right.
2020. Mm-hmm.
Yes, 2020. So everyone is scared, okay? Like there's always a warning. Um, I never was really scared of anything. So when that was scary and they just kind of like mandated or said that we will close. So we thought we'll just be closed for a week. And that at that time I was working at an adult medical day center specializing in dementia. So I was no longer at the hospital, but I have friends and connections who, of course, work in the big corporation. So so everyone talks about it and, just
Mm-hmm.
get panicking, things like that. And I still even remember that at one point there was like a parade, like a motorcade, um, like motorcade that they are like praising the nurses, praising everyone
Mm-hmm.
who works at the hospital because they're saving lives.
Yeah.
And so, but in my mind, I said, hey, as nurses, we've been helping and we've been doing what we always do. And now
Mm-hmm.
suddenly you want to have a motorcade? I said, So, you start thinking of that. But everyone was scared. Even my previous coworkers, when I talk to them, they go all crazy into I'm asking them what they're doing with all the preparation and the mask and on the hazmat. So that's a general picture. But in our facility itself, we closed it,
Mm.
and
Oh,
for a week we weren't sure. We closed it so because it was a day center where the adults will come to the center, and in the evening they go home.
I see. Well, do you mean like the elderly or people with some sort of
Well,
rehabilitation or?
yeah,
Ah,
in the adult medical day center, this is really for the elderly
uh-huh.
who have some disability, and it could be mental cognition challenge, like with the dementia. But we
Oh,
we also have some who are post stroke, or so they're unable to really be free or be independent at home. So these daycares came as a response for that type of population. So, but in the evening they go home.
mm-hmm.
So that was really a great combination. And these elders are not. The family decided to, be, let their members do this kind of like activity because they don't want them to be in a nursing home. So
Mm-hmm.
that was even before the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So that's a situation. So now when we close it, everyone was of course cooperative, like they don't question why it was closed because they thought it's necessary. But
Mm-hmm.
as it continues, the worry is that the reason why the service existed is because families needed that service. Some have to go to work, like their
Mm-hmm.
children or the husbands or the wives. Okay, they have to go to work and they have to bring their adult seniors to be in that facility where they could socialize, where a health professional like me can manage their medications, and we do social activity. So it was one of the most meaningful work that I was involved in more or less 10 years before this happened.
So was the logic basically that okay, so say someone has dementia and they're being sort of worked on or looked after for dementia. Was the logic it would be better for them to be sort of cut free and to try to survive than be exposed to COVID, and that's why they closed it down? Like, what was the reasoning?
Exactly,
Uh,
just as you mentioned it,
hmm.
like that it's scary, that is so contagious, and then you're just going to either you'll end up with the disease, or then you eventually might even hurt your family, or eventually you might even, as they keep saying, that it will cause death, or any all the other things that they keep saying. So it was a whole panic thing of like, you know, don't if you don't want to get sick, then don't go where
Mm-hmm.
you will be with other people. Just stay with your family.
Now
Okay, just
let's contrast this a little bit. So that's was your personal experiences there in New Jersey. But did any of your, like cousins or extended relatives, who I assume are still in the Philippines, did they have any stories to tell? How did the Philippines handle things any differently, or did they do sort of the same thing?
oh, they did the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes the Philippines has a way of even imitating and make it worse,
Oh,
you know. But
okay.
so, and then when I saw my family members, they're like, maybe it's here too, but they're like washing, rinsing the pesos, the money, the
Mm-hmm.
pesos.
Oh,
They're like,
really?
they're, yeah. So like that's when I decided to speak to them and explain to them that it is not what they think it is or what they're hearing. So, but it could be as crazy as that. However, as it continued, the situation continued. What I noticed, the difference between here and there, they started to really like assert their rights, their understanding of the Philippine Constitution, that
Mm.
they can just mandate those things without explaining why, or if it's really a lawful thing to do. So but they they cannot, they haven't been so strict in a way, like, harass people like what happened in many places in United States or in
Oh.
Australia,
So you mean the Philippines was more respectful of citizens' rights during COVID than the United States was?
Well, I hear that from some of my family
Wow.
members. Okay, but there's always, of course, situations when it's worse. But
Mm-hmm.
in general, it was like that. But when they just actually kind of open up for the travel right now. Uh, but when I mentioned to you that they can copy more crazily,
Uh-huh.
and that's true to other things. Okay, so that's why I wasn't surprised when I say to other things, whether it's a holiday celebration or, if the Filipinos wants to copy something from another country, they copy it and they improvise it more.
Mm-hmm.
So really.
Well, yeah, that can happen in Moscow too, and it's one of the exciting things about living here is that the society is changing because for so many years everyone just wants to copy Europe, and that's why you'll see all sorts of bike paths that they have been built in these weird locations around Moscow. Right now, for the next 4 months, it's going to be impossible to ride a bicycle unless you're really committed to it. But in Europe, they do it, so we have to do it here, even though it makes absolutely no sense. But, anyways, that's about Russia. That's not about you. And we're talking about you today. And one thing you mentioned to me that I thought was also interesting is you mentioned that you've been basically for your entire life very skeptical of vaccines. And that, in fact, you mentioned your son was born at some point in the 80s, and even back then you were against vaccination. So, in a way, you're kind of a trendsetter. You're ahead of the curve. But what brought you to that conclusion?
Early on in my childhood, as I was learning about health, and also, I wanted deep within inside of me, I really wanted to take care of sick people. So it's like I'm always learning even the indigenous ways of taking care of people. So then when I started to that I wanted to be a nurse, so I asked Filipinos who are nurses already, and I will ask them, are you happy to be a nurse? And then one would say yes, and the other one would say no.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always asking questions and observing things. Okay, then and we grew up in church as well, and in the church, not in the Catholic Church, I'm like a minority, and most people even thought that, were surprised if I say, no, I'm not Catholic. I was raised as Protestant.
Mm-hmm.
And you were kind of like given the freedom to learn that you are created in the image of a creator, of a source that, is infinite in many ways. And because of that, when I learned from from other people who have like high blood pressure, and I wasn't a nurse yet, and
Mm-hmm.
they said that, once you have a high blood pressure, your medicines, you have to take your medicines forever. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I said, no, it can't be. So I'm always questioning like that. So then I realized, and knowing about natural medicine, I have decided to acknowledge our body as the source of our protection,
Mm-hmm.
primarily because it is something sacred, and we have a sacred role to protect our body. So I thought, well, if that's the case, then maybe this our body will be our first line of defense. And then when I keep thinking and learning about um, corporations, that they can do anything. When I say corporations,
Yeah.
multinational corporations, like selling food to people, that because of profit, they'll do anything to sell
Yeah.
anything to people. And it doesn't matter if you get sick or not. So that's when I kept thinking. And then we started as a group in the Philippines, young people. Then we started to check on that. If this medicine has all these side effects, then why would we be taking this medicine? So in short,
Mm-hmm.
I said, you know. So when I came to United States already, for my energy or my frequency, I had the opportunity to study local group study in New Jersey, and we were learning know thyself to heal thyself.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I was introduced of what the story of the vaccine is, or immunization. So knowing that there's a lot of things that they place in the vaccine, and there's a lot of adverse effect, and that the whole story, even before of vaccine, is not the real story that we're being told. So I thought to myself, maybe I have to think twice, even
Mm-hmm.
for myself. And at that time, we weren't mandated that we have to get some vaccine in order to work at the hospital. Because when I came, I was working in a big New York corporation hospital. So that always was in my mind. Then, of course, I was single at the time. I
Yeah.
didn't have a child. So I kept thinking, if I want to give birth, it would be pregnant and have a baby, I better make sure that my DNA, my
Mm-hmm.
genes, everything of me is healthy, so that I could, yeah, have a healthy child. So my mind is always moving forward, that if I have to have someone, give birth to any person, any child, and live this world, it better, maybe my best contribution is to give birth to someone as healthy as, like, my son. So
Right.
I that. And I'm always attracted to groups that study about health.
Yeah.
So, and with that, gave me an introduction and empowerment that I can create my way of life when
Mm-hmm.
it comes. All
Well,
right. And so that's what I did.
well, one thing is that, especially when you talked about different groups, one of the reasons why I kind of just sort of, in terms of health, of course, I try to not have too much, prepackaged food and all that, because that's understandable that that's not going to be too good for you. But there's so many different competing theories about things. I mean, if you look at nutrition, some groups say that eating animal products is bad for you. Others say that we human beings should be more like carnivores and eat a ton of meat. During my lifetime, eggs have been evil for their cholesterol, and then they became good, and everything becomes good and bad, and even the food pyramid. When I guess you and I were very young, like the recommendation from the government was to sort of eat vegetables and grains and meat and all that in sort of equal amounts. And now the base of the food pyramid is grains and everything else is lesser. So this stuff is constantly changing. How do we find the truth? Like I mentioned, that's just nutrition alone. Like it seems like there's a million different takes on health. How do we find the truth, and why are there so many?
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many, because that's part of the game.
Hmm.
And if for your viewers who are awake, and for those who really want eager to know more about their health, if one aspect in our existence here is already distorted or manipulated,
Mm-hmm.
you can expect that everything else will be distorted. So yeah, well, I remember, Tim, when I came here, they were like, coconut is like bad. It's really bad.
Oh.
In the 1980s, that was the time, right? Then I said to myself, how can it be so bad? I come from the city and the region that we grow coconut. We eat coconut 3 times a day, or maybe more.
Yeah.
So, and we have a coconut plantation all over, and there was even a oil factory. So, like, but one thing is that I could advise people. How would you know which one works for? First of all, I've noticed that if there's a lot of promotion, marketing, and then there you see it in the big screen, I'm always leery of that, because that
Mm.
means, it's just questionable. Then, however, you could explore whichever you want to try. Okay. So your best evidence or your best help is checking how you feel. Know what your body tells you. And definitely, because we are all different, expect that there is no one diet that's good for everyone. It's like have that common sense. So when we can start really remembering that we have the wisdom, even in terms of health maintenance, health recovery, because that's also one thing that we have sort of like forgotten, or we kind of like relinquish everything about our health to our so-called the opposite side. So when I say,
Mm-hmm.
like for a lot of people who are freedom fighters, but if you're, if you want to really be sovereign, then be sovereign in everything.
Yeah.
Try that, or else you end up being in the hospital where they will just control everything for you. So always know that, and we're different. So people we should be different in our ways of eating, and always go to the roots of your of where you come from. Because right, with physical we have our DNA, and that
Mm-hmm.
depends also from our background. So then that's the reason, I guess, why sometimes I crave certain food from the Philippines. I have upgraded many ways of from my food, and so all of us have a way that we can upgrade our cultural food or our ways. So yeah, and you keep looking at it also. There's a lot of misinformation and manipulation of our mind that, hey, look, it has to be low fat, and look what happened. Low fat, then it went into a lot of problems for cardiovascular situation,
Mm-hmm.
and because so when one diet is highly promoted, sooner or later there's a trend of certain illnesses.
Yeah.
So people have to start paying attention the trend, the patterns of what's happening.
Well, then
So
that kind of presents a very specific problem to America. Because, for example, is there any diet that they could recommend? Because, you mentioned about, coconuts. Well, I could say that my ancestors, probably until my parents, I guess, in America, were probably the first ones. I mean, all my ancestors are Slavic. There were no coconuts. You know what I mean? Probably my mom and dad were the first ones in the family to ever eat one. So in some ways, I don't know. Could you make a decent diet and health plan for everyone, be they African, Southeast Asian, Arab, Slavic, and so on?
well, it's well known that all of us must eat more vegetables than meat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a general already, and less processed, especially sugar, refined sugar,
Mm-hmm.
is always much better. So that's like that's good for everyone. Okay, now yeah, if it's not something that you really was raised, have fun with it, but don't go crazy that you gotta do it because
Mm-hmm.
it's what you read. No.
Yeah.
Okay, no, not like that. You always have to really, like, say, go back to your body, which for me, the one that is neglected sometimes, the people thought is, recognizing that maybe your blood type is asking you to eat something else because that's your blood type. I'm not an expert on that, but I'm noticing that even for me, that I said, oh, maybe I should eat more of this because it's my body's telling me to do so.
Mm-hmm.
So and back to like the basics of your physical body, which is the foundation also of your emotional and spiritual body, and so on. So and of course, another good part of your diet is the preparation. Okay, although fat is good, oil is not good. I
Mm.
will say that because when oil is highly processed, even coconut oil, it's highly processed. Imagine that it will rancidify quickly. It's like an inflammatory substance.
Hmm.
So like if you want to, just like if you want to make candle, right?
Yeah.
What can you make? You can make it from oil, from any kind of oil. You can make a candle.
Yeah.
So imagine that, putting that in your body
Hmm.
as like getting inflamed. So that's when you have now your body will tend to oxidize. So in general, I've been to the transition that at one point, especially like on the early 80s, late 70s, you're like, safflower is good, sunflower is good. So, all, because that's like
Mm.
vegetarian time. Because I've been,
Well, well, in Russia, they always say the opposite because sunflower seed oil is like the super El Cheapo oil. That's in Russia, so it's kind of the peasants' cooking oil. So it's sort of looked down upon, even though I don't think there's anything that too bad about sunflowers. But so I wanted to ask then, as someone who's been sort of inside, we're talking a lot about nutrition right now, but someone who's been inside, major American hospitals and understands how the system works and all that, what is it that's really cutting the lives of Americans short? Because I personally get offended when the news media tries to convince us that it's like gun violence is killing Americans when, like, I think 11,000 people a year die of guns, but in a country of 330 plus million that's ever growing, that's such a teeny tiny amount that's less than 1%. So it has to be something health related, I would assume. Is it the sedentary lifestyle that we're not moving enough? Is it the nutrition? Is there something else that's happening? Because one thing, just again to link this program in with Russia, is every time I've taken the kids to America, back to the Midwest where I'm from, I always go there and I feel like I am a Greek god of men my age. I mean, everyone just looks so sick and so fat. And I don't mean this to be an America hater because you're in America and you look fantastic, right? So this isn't an anti-American thing, but it's just the reality. You go to Walmart and people just look like they're already half dead. What is causing this?
well, it's been known already by many people that, when you don't take care of
Mm-hmm.
yourself, especially eating the SAD diet, okay, the standard American diet, that's like a contributing foundation. Then, so it's even sad that it's just lately, maybe in the last 2 decades, that the doctors came on board.
Uh huh.
Okay, I still remember that before, um, they wouldn't even recognize that the food is really affecting people's health.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and but because they don't recognize that, so every illness, um, and sometimes my observation before and even now is that Americans tend to be scared right away of their any discomfort they have. And when I say is
Uh,
scared, oh no, maybe that they don't have as much tolerance like for pain. So the
uh,
minute they have something painful, they go right away for over the counter drugs, okay,
uh-huh.
medication. So because of that, then and if they cannot get that, then they go to their physician. So when the physician, not knowing about healthy lifestyle, we start prescribing. So what happened is that elders that whom I have seen, and now you could see it also maybe before they become 60, they just keep adding list of medications. So what's causing them eventually to look the way you described it is prescription, because if there's some illnesses that they cannot overcome, then it won't even inspire them to move.
Hmm.
And of course, look at the sedentary life. We tend to have a lot of reasons why we could not move. And I know others may said, oh, they move, but they're always challenged and they still don't look good. And perhaps because eventually their hormones already were so off from the very beginning, so they need a little bit more interventions rather than exercise, just moving. However, it's very basic. That's why we have limbs. Our body's built like this, so we can move. We can be
Mm-hmm.
active. We can be active, eat well, think well, then have that social life. And that's what happened, of course, when this pandemic came, is we're all kind of separated and we didn't have that engaged social life in a face-to-face way. So, and for a fact also that when you are not exposed outside with, and not having the sun, not having that solar synthesis, that's again, really bad. And
Mm.
I see some of your videos when you were showing the audience about Russia. You're outside, even if
Yeah.
it's cold, you're outdoor.
Yeah,
So
everyone's outside, especially on New Year's. But yeah.
there you go. So it's important to be outdoor. And you can also maybe, you may have the observation that the people who live too much in the city with all the EMFs and all the technology too much around them are the ones also who don't look as good as when they're outside again
Mm-hmm.
in a little countryside where there's closer to still natural way of living.
So, anyways, guys, if you enjoyed this video and you like the opinions coming out of my big fat mouth, then join up on my Telegram channel. That's Tim Kirby Hardcore on Telegram. Link, of course, in the description.